So with that, let me turn to Senator Padilla.
I think that might even have been intentional. Just 10x, 20x, however you want to scale up, but that's precisely an issue, starting with when forest fires act like brush fires. You can just imagine the devastation. But thank you all for participating in today's hearing. As members of this committee, we need to obviously consider the economic impacts of extreme weather events holistically, including the many indirect costs to the agricultural industry. And I want to lead by referencing farm workers, who often bear the brunt of indirect costs associated with extreme weather events, which includes but is not limited to severe storms, floods, drought, wildfire, and extreme heat. We saw this in California when recent flooding devastated large swaths of strawberry fields in the towns of Pájaro and Watsonville. It was farm workers who waded through flooded fields or were forced to go without pay, or still being forced to go without pay because of lost crops. Mr. Willis, how often and to what extent do you believe federal agencies and programs factor in the indirect costs of climate change in the agricultural industry, such as loss of livelihoods, exposure to various health threats, and lost productivity?
I want to make sure I understand the question so we don't answer it incorrectly. How often does a crop insurance program take those things into account? Is that the question, sir?
Yeah, not just that specific program, but programs in general, departments and agencies in general.
I think every program is a little bit different. The crop insurance is very focused on the value of the crop and trying to compensate for that. But other crops at the Department of Agriculture, I think, have a broader purpose to them, to be very blunt on that. But the crop insurance really doesn't take those into account. What it does do, though, I think, is provide a lot of confidence for those growers who, if you don't have crop insurance, you're going to make some decisions, letting people go off, et cetera, but you might take a much harsher reaction than crop insurance. So I think it provides somewhat of a buffer financially for producers and benefits the other industries involved and the other people involved.
And look, the example I gave is one of floods, right? That leads to lost crops, so therefore less of a need for the workforce to harvest. And what happens as a result, it's not just those individuals, those families that go without wages, but the community in general goes with a declining tax base because of weather. Same on the drought side of the equation. So any thoughts or suggestions on how to improve these federal programs to be more effective reaching out to workers and the greater community that relies on seasonal or even permanent agricultural jobs?
The best answer I can give you is probably USDA, and they have individuals probably need to continue to do outreach for those sectors. That's a little out of my area of expertise, and that's about all I would dare say, sir.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the honesty, but sadly I think it's a little out of the expertise or the attention of a lot of federal employees because of the programs and agencies that they work in. Let me do a follow-up question on a more specific topic. California proudly produces 80% of wine in the United States and single-handedly is the fourth largest producer globally. But the vineyards, winery operations, and the jobs and the communities that they support are now routinely facing the threats of wildfires and trying to deal with the impacts of wildfire smoke, which creates an ashy taste known as smoke taint when absorbed into the grape. For growers looking in the northeastern part of the country, they're looking up at the skies right now and looking at the smoke coming in from Canada. The impact of smoke isn't always predictable. Depends on how long the smoke lingers, the variety of the grape, and a number of smoke events, which is why Congress provided the U.S. Department of Agriculture $4.5 million to research the impact of smoke exposure on grapes and wines. So, Mr. Willis, for an industry that generates more than $170 billion in annual economic activity, and by one estimate suffered $3.7 billion in losses in 2020 alone, do you believe Congress can do more to assist researchers to help us protect this vital industry?
I'm going to talk about crop insurance because one of the advantages of crop insurance is you do not have to wait every 5 years for a farm bill. USDA has the authority to adjust those programs to take into account new problems that are coming about, and they have a shorter timeline. And so I do think there are things they can do to address those types of situations. And I think crop insurance is a good tool because they can take the data, they can take the research, they don't have to wait for a farm bill, they can adjust the policy so that it provides, so it's more responsive.
Thank you. And I know my time is up, Mr. Chair, but just one quick follow-up item. I know the general topic of crop insurance has come up, including with Senator Stabenow, who chairs the Agricultural Committee. But can you comment specifically on how it works for specialty crops, which are different than non-specialty crops, obviously?
Certainly, crop insurance started strong in the Midwest over time. There has been a significant effort, there was when I was there, and I know there still is, to try to make crop insurance continually work better for specialty crops, fruits and vegetables. I think from somebody in your shoes, continually to encourage USDA to talk to those groups, to do those listening sessions with areas, there is improvement that needs to be made. But I can tell you from the seat I used to have, it is challenging to know exactly what to do because the risks they suffer are not the same risks the Midwest suffers.
So they're called specialty crops. Thank you, Mr. Chair.